Hi, I'm Heather from Handmade, and today I have some awesome guests to help us with our video. So over here we have a mermaid skeleton, and here we have the pirate skeleton. And since it's getting close to Halloween, I thought they could come and help us make a really cool trick-or-treat bag. I have a free pattern I'm offering on my blog that is a pattern for this tail-inspired trick-or-treat bag. So this is a mermaid one. It has scales on it and it has the fins. It's nice and shiny. It's really fun. And this one, it uses the same pattern, but you add these teeth right here along the top to make a shark-inspired trick-or-treat bag. These are great trick-or-treat bags that will add a lot to their costume. So the pattern pieces you will need are the front and back of the triangle pieces. This is a piece that's cut on the fold, and it needs to be interfaced. So I've already interfaced the back. As long as it's not a knit, you can use whatever you want, like quilting cotton. You can add iron-on vinyl, and that works great. And then you need two of the same pieces as lining. And then you need two straps, and these need to be interfaced. So I've already interfaced those. And then you're going to need 4 fin pieces. You need to have 2 of each. Opposite. So I have 2 of these which are interfaced, and then I have 2 more fin pieces, but these actually have fusible foam. You can use fusible fleece or fusible foam, whatever you want. You just really want these fins to be stiff and to stick out, so that's why you interface it and use fleece or foam. So for my fabric, I used a shiny gray fabric for my fin and straps, and then I'm using this shiny kind of crinkled fabric. But for this one I used all less shiny gray fabric because a shark isn't as shiny. And then for this one I used a shiny gray fabric for this part, but then for the fin I used this same shiny fabric I used for this fin here to give it a cool look. I wanted to switch up the fabrics 3 different times while I'm making it, so you get to see the project done different ways and choose, you know, an idea of how you want to do it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pin sides together so that we can sew the seams. You want your fins to go right sides together, but you want your foam pieces to be opposite. So this one is going to be pinned onto here, and this one is going to be pinned onto here. So these are pinned together. Then we're going to pin our lining together, right sides together. And when you pin your lining, when you sew your lining, you are going to leave a 6-inch gap on the side for turning. So what I like to do to remind myself is I put 2 pins at the top to remind me, oh, I need to stop and leave a hole. And then at the bottom of where I want my hole to be, I put 2 pins again. And that is really just a great reminder that while you're sewing, those 2 pins will remind you, oh, I need to stop and do a hole. So sew your lining together, right sides together, regular stitch length, regular needle, universal needle, back stitch at the top, and then now when I get to the hole, I'm going to back stitch, lift the presser foot and cut my thread, and then start back up on the other side where the other pins are, back stitch, sew, and then back stitch at the end. So that is the lining, and then we are going to sew the fins. And it's the same with the 1/2 inch seam allowance, regular stitch, regular needle. Back stitch at the beginning, at the end, and make sure you have a really nice point, to have that nice point on the fin, and then do the other one. We're going to trim the edges. So the lining, I'm trimming the bottom, and I have a video about trimming and grading if that will help you. So I've trimmed so that there's less bulk right down there at the bottom. And then for the fins, you're going to have to trim at that point, and then trim the seam allowance that has the fleece or the foam. You're going to trim that down to 1/8 of an inch. Trim a little bit of the other seam allowance. And then you need to clip the inner curve. Now I'm going to do the same to the other one. So now I'm going to turn these right side out. And this is where you get to first see how cool your fin looks. And I like to use, you can use a point turner. I like to just carefully use the edge of my scissors when they're not too pokey. If they're kind of blunt edge, you can use that. And I'm just poking out that edge. So I pressed these fins flat, so they're nice and flat. And now you can leave it like this if you're doing a shark, or you can add some stitching like quilting to make it look like fins. So I'm going to add a couple lines of stitching. I'm starting at the tip and coming out so that so the fabric doesn't get pushed while I'm sewing it. So now those fins, that stitching lines make it look like little mermaid fins, which is really, really fun. So for the straps, what I did, you cut it out and it's a big long strip. So first you iron it in half, and this wrinkle wouldn't be here. So you iron it in half. Then you bring the outer edges in to meet that fold in the middle and press it in half like that, and then you bring it over one more time. So all of your raw edges are in there and enclosed. It's 4 layers of fabric, so it makes it a nice, strong, and sturdy strap. And then you sew an eighth of an inch from the edge on both straps. Now, with your 2 outer edges, you need to pin your fin onto one side before you sew the sides. And you're going to carefully pin one fin, and it's 1/2 inch from the bottom, because that's where your seam allowance is going to be. And I'm going to pin this fin like this. So I like to kind of fold it. It's just, you have to feel with your hand and just kind of roll it up and put it right inside so that you can lay the other piece on top. It's a little tricky, I will say. That's a little tricky to fold that up in that tiny space, pin this on top, and then sew it. So I'm going to pin the bottom. And pin where those fins are. I'm pinning all the layers together and keeping that rolled fin in place. So now we're going to sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and be careful around the pin. Back stitch at the top. And this is where I'm getting to the fin, so I'm going to go slow so I can get up over that edge. And I'm feeling inside with my fingers to see if I'm sewing over the fin, which I can feel is right there in the way. You don't want to sew over the tip of your fin and have it stuck in the seam allowance. When you go off the edge of the fin at the point, about 5 stitches that you sew across the bottom before you get to the other side where the other fin is, and start again. Now, before you turn it right side out, you need to clip the bottom so there's not all of that extra fabric in there when you, down there at the point when you flip it. And now, let's see what it looks like when you flip it right side out. And there is that really cool mermaid tail with those cool fins at the bottom. And I love that crinkled fabric. I think it looks just like, you know, like a fish or something. A perfect mermaid tail.
If you want to make the shark bag, you need to make some teeth. I decided to just use the corners of handkerchiefs, and I cut each corner off, and they were about an inch tall. And I used about 16 little triangles for the teeth. You can instead use bias binding, or you can sew each triangle. You can also use rickrack or some other trim to make your teeth. Pin the teeth along the top edge of the bag and overlap them slightly, since the seam allowance will take a bit of the bottom off of the triangle, and you want the teeth to be touching instead of separated by space. Once you have the teeth on, then you need to pin the straps over the teeth.
Now we are going to pin the straps to the right side at the top, and I like to pin mine. I find the center and I pin my straps 6 inches apart. Once you have your straps pinned on, we are going to, with right sides together, we're going to pin the lining to the bag. So we need to fold our, you need to fold up your fins again so it can fit down at the bottom while you're pinning it on the inside of the lining. And we're going to pin the top edges together. Once you have this all pinned together, you're going to sew along the top edge at 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. When you get to the corner or the side seam, it is a corner, and so you go straight until you hit the seam allowance, and then you turn slightly and go the other direction. It's kind of an angle when you sew, so I'm just slightly turning it, and that's because the bag is a triangle. There's another turn. Now, before you turn the bag right side out, you need to clip this edge. So you can see, here's that straight edge, that little point at the seam, and then you keep going. And since that's a point, you're going to need to reduce the bulk and trim that. So I did one side, now I'm doing the other side. And then we're going to turn this bag right side out. And look how cool that bag is. There is 2 more steps to finish it, but it is looking really good so far. So pull your lining out, and where that hole is in the seam, you're going to just, as if the seam were there, fold the fabric inside like this, and you're just going to top stitch right along the edge to close that seam. You can sew it by hand if you want. But it's much faster by machine, and it still looks just fine. And it's on the inside. So stuff that lining back into the inside. You can press along the top for a nice crease up here, and then we're going to top stitch. So I pressed the top, and now we are going to top stitch around the top for a nice, so it just keeps that lining in place. When you get to that side seam point, you need to stop and pivot.
When you are top stitching the top of the shark bag with the teeth, just make sure that your teeth are looking straight up and that your lining is pushed down inside the bag.
Now clip those threads, and you have a perfect, beautiful mermaid tail bag. It's so fun, it's great for candy. I hope you enjoy your mermaid or shark tote bag. I can't wait to see yours. Please share it with me on social media. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.